What is up, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Black Hole Rhetoric. This is Paul.
And this is Patrick.
I hope everyone has been doing great this last week. We're coming back at you with a little bit more local news, and then we're going to continue on with moving on to more national events and kind of just discussing what's been going on, our take on it, and we're going to ask you guys what you guys think on these topics, too. I mean, feel free to participate on our Facebook page, Black Hole Rhetoric, on Facebook. So to start off, we're going to talk a little bit on Williston's tax rate, right? So our sales tax. Right now, our sales tax is 8%. And coming up here very soon in the next vote, there will be a vote to remove a 1 cent sales tax. And what that, or the 1% sales tax, 1% of that. And the commissioners are asking everybody to go out and vote yes on the extension to keep the sales tax, that 1% sales tax, for another 10 years. And the part that I find really interesting about that is that Williston already has probably one of the highest sales taxes, as far as like major cities, one of the highest sales taxes in all of North Dakota. And they say that this sales tax is there to off-balance amounts owed when it comes to curbs and main lines and different street construction projects. Like, that's what this 1% sales tax is supposed to be used for. But I guess one of my biggest criticisms of that is just recently we saw there are issues with construction on Main Street, right? So this money that we're giving them is not necessarily being, I'd say, having the proper oversight. So is it really a good thing to continue to give them an extra 1%, especially when we're the highest in the state? Patrick, what do you think about like our current road conditions, like curbs? I mean,
they're
curbs
awful.
And roads. Yeah, like
even just looking around town, the streets and everything. There's potholes, or nothing's really looks like it's been touched on.
Yeah.
In quite a few years.
Yeah.
It seems like there's always construction somewhere in town every summer, but I've yet to see anything that really benefits from it.
Right, and it seems like it's just the steadily repairing of the same locations.
Well, you do have those some of the areas where they're on that swampy land where every spring, once everything thaws, the ground shifts and the roads get tore up. You're going to have that. There's not much you can do about that.
Well, and like in a sense, like I would almost kind of counter argue that, like, instead of doing steady construction on the same areas, there is ways to make better roads, right? So really what it is that whoever our engineer is, we're trying to find a balance between the cost of road construction, like the continuous repair of it, and like having an affordable road, right? Mm-hmm. So they are finding a balance, but is that balance actually proper? For them to have to redo everything every year in certain spots, why not just spend the extra money to begin with and not have to do it at the same spot every year or every couple of years? Instead, just spend a little bit more money and it doesn't have to be redone for X number of extra years.
The only thing I can think of with that is just creating jobs.
Yeah. Yep.
It's guaranteed work.
But, my personal opinion on the sales tax is that we absolutely should not be extending this sales tax. And I think it's very important for people to vocalize to not extend this sales tax. I'm coming out and I'm openly talking against it. Because when you look at cities such as Minot, Stanley, Dickinson, Fargo, all of these other major cities, some of which have been impacted by oil, all of them have a lower sales tax. Even the highest one next to us is Fargo, and they have a 7.5% sales tax. We have an 8% sales tax.
And Fargo's magnitudes larger.
Yeah. Yep. Well, and I'm sure there is some math involved where it's like more people buying stuff, so they get more money. But like when you take a look at Stanley or Watford has a 6.5% sales tax. So we have a full 1.5% more of sales tax than what they do. And that city is absolutely beautiful. Their roads are, from what I've seen, very, very nice, well taken care of, even in the residential areas. So I don't think it's very necessary for us to continue on with this 8% sales tax. I mean, if we're given the opportunity to take away a tax, I think we should say yes. We will no longer, we should say yes to getting rid of it. We should not extend it. We should vote no on this next measure.
And I think when we first talked about the construction, you kind of touched on this. Taxes like that don't ever go away.
Right. And
so you think of, down south or more East Coast where you have a lot of toll roads. Once those roads are paid for, they don't take the tolls away.
No, they use it as a profit. My biggest issue here is with our recent Main Street issues, right? So without proper oversight, like this, we have to consider this our money. This is the people of Williston's money. And without proper oversight, our money is being spent in an ill fashion, such as the Main Street initiative that our city took place in, and now they're having to redo it. Yes, it's being done free at the cost of the companies involved, but who's to say that this isn't going to turn into a couple-year reoccurrence, where the next time around our city will be paying for this. This is the people's money, and we should react accordingly that this is ours. And I know that if I spent a lot of money on a project and I expected it to be done in a certain way, I'd be really upset if it wasn't done in that way.
Yes.
And I would be even more upset if I had to continuously dump money into it. No.
And I don't think that was ever the plan, was for this to be an ongoing thing. I think it was supposed to be done in that 2-year period and never be touched on again. Maybe a little bit of maintenance in the future.
But as any government, I mean, they like to have a steady flow of income, and they kind of readjust their budgets accordingly. I mean, we even see this issue on our state level when you look at how our state has used all of that excess funds from our oil endeavor here on the western side of the state. They kind of over budgeted themselves, and now with the pullback from the oil, we've seen that university systems in the state have had issues funding certain programs. And it's like, well, what was the issue with the program before, right? So instead of doing excessive spending on the programs in what I would consider ways to better them or to make them a little bit more self-independent and generate their own income, they overspent, in my opinion, kind of irresponsibly. And then when that money kind of dried up, they got punished. So we need to make sure that there's proper oversight in our government when it comes to our money. And in my opinion, we haven't done such a great job in Williston.
No.
I think that it could be spent in other places slightly better, and especially in the what I would consider ill attempts for the beautification of Williston. When you even go to Watford City, like, I don't know, when was the last time that you've been down to Watford City?
I haven't for quite some time.
That city is absolutely beautiful.
I know before they did a lot of the construction, like rerouting the highway and stuff, there were parts of town that were still pretty crappy.
Yeah, yep. But now, I mean, since they did the bypass and everything, the city itself of Watford is absolutely, I mean, it's stunning and extremely impressive with what they've done with that place. I mean, and the big thing is like, I just don't want more and more sales taxes, more taxes for everybody, with that money being irresponsibly spent. If it's being properly managed with proper oversight for things that benefit the community, it's a good thing.
Absolutely.
But if it isn't being properly managed, then we have issues, and the people of Williston need to respond in a proper way.
And I think that's a good place to end on that, is just informing people what's going on and having them stand up and say, no, we want either better oversight or this tax gone.
Right. Yeah. Yep. Exactly. And next up, one of the really, really big things, I'm sure all of you are almost sick of hearing about it.
I don't even want to talk about it.
Is the Kathy Griffin, Donald Trump's head incident. I mean, yeah.
Honestly, we probably wouldn't have had to talk about this if it wasn't for her deciding to play the victim afterwards.
Right, with that latest news conference.
So, here, let me ask you this. When was the last time you even thought of Kathy Griffin? before this, I forgot that she existed.
Right. Yeah, it had been quite some time before.
Many years.
Yeah. Yep.
I think that initially it was a stunt to try and, she knew it was going to get enough attention. Mm-hmm. She did the stunt to try and maybe let people know, hey, I'm still around.
Yep.
And it backfired, and now she's trying to play the victim.
Right. Which I thought was very, did you watch that? Did you watch that press conference of hers?
Yeah, it was the way she delivered. Oh, I guess I didn't see a press conference. I saw her apology video.
Okay.
And the delivery on it was just so insincere.
Right. Yeah. It was rehearsed. I mean,
very
honestly,
monotone. Just,
yeah. Well, and
I'm sorry because you're upset.
So I watched that the apology video, and then not too long, like the next day, she did the news conference, right? The press conference.
Okay.
And during this press conference, she decided to kind of, what you say, like play the victim. She flipped she had apologized for her actions, and I could have seen that it kind of just disappearing, right? Like it would have
disappeared.
It would have taken a little while, but it would have just sunk into oblivion. She would have been able to maintain a couple of the jobs that she had. But she does this news conference, and she comes out and she starts to blame Donald Trump. And I mean, like
there was an article I seen. I only read the headline, so I mean, I didn't go into detail. But the headline that I saw was that Trump was basically attacking her, trying to ruin her career.
Yeah. And that's what she said during this press conference. And then she even got a little bit weirder, and she said that it's all a woman thing, right? Like that's the only reason that she's being attacked is because she's a woman.
No.
I mean,
that's no. If another man did that, I think that he would actually be attacked more, almost.
Right, like as far as, seeing like the part that I do have issues with, like I don't think it's absolutely true. It's because of how the extreme that this action was. Like that's what I really think it was. But we have also seen recently other artists come out and do vulgar acts towards Trump-like figures, the Snoop Dogg, right? And I think like the main reason that those didn't get as much attention is because like it was obviously not Donald Trump. It was obviously in like a very dark satirical way that they were being portrayed,
Well, and that turned into Trump and Snoop Dogg beefing on Twitter too, so it ended up having more of a comedic factor to it, right?
Yep.
I just.
Well, and let's be honest here. Like the beheading things still echo with a lot of people in the United States because when I was like 13, 14 years old, that's when in the news like you heard about American citizens being beheaded over in Afghanistan and wherever in the Middle East.
Yeah,
and like that was like the terrorist main form of killing the infidels was doing videos beheading people.
Yeah,
and I think that might have struck a chord where it's like, hang on a second here. We really remember terrorists beheading American citizens. And for that to be kind of shoved in our face again, where it's like, oh, it's a person holding somebody's head. Yeah, definitely not a good idea for Kathy Griffin to do that.
I probably wouldn't have even cared that she did it if it wasn't, the way she handled it after the fact. I love dark comedy and gestures and art and all that.
Yeah.
I will defend your right to post things even as messed up as what she did.
Yeah.
But then, especially, there's a video of her saying that it's going to end her career before she posts it. Like, it's just a clip of her and, the dude that took the photos at the photo shoot. And she, like, they're looking at the pictures, and she's like, yeah, we need to move to Mexico tonight, and you need to call your family. And, like, obviously she's joking around, but she, like, registered
that
the magnitude of what she was doing.
Right.
So if your job is to toe the line, or if you're out, you're throwing things out there to get a reaction like that, when you get a reaction, you don't get to play the victim.
Right.
You don't get to say, "Oh, my career's over."
Yeah. You can't. You probably shouldn't cry. And I don't know. So since you didn't watch the press conference, another thing that she blamed, besides the president's family and the president, that she also blamed white men. Right, like white men in the industries, in all of the industries. And she went on to say that how every job that she's done, the boss has always been a white man. And it's like, well, now hold up a second here. You're getting paid millions of dollars. She has a net worth above $20 million.
How? Nobody knows who she is anymore.
Right. But, she has this large net worth, and, I mean, if there really was discrimination from these white men, do you think that she would get paid $20 million for her 2-bit comedy act? I mean, that just seems a little bit ridiculous. She's just trying to get one of those tags associated with this instead of, oh, hey, Kathy Griffin mimics terrorist attacks on President Donald Trump.
Well, I think part of the reason that she's bringing, gender into this issue is to try and take away from the magnitude of what she did.
Right.
Right. Because people right now, especially on the left side, they eat that shit up.
Well, and both the right and the left, they eat it up. There's the bandwagon followers. Exactly. What you were getting at. There are those women that will just blindly start to support her because, she's now made this an issue about the sexes. Instead of it just being it's her that is making this the big issue between males and females. Mm-hmm. Instead of actually just taking the responsibility for her actions, saying that it was bad, it was poor taste, and then kind of accepting the consequences, she's trying to flip it around and blame other people. And that is one of the main issues with, I believe, our society. Instead of just taking responsibility of it, owning it, and letting it die off, she completely, I think, ruined her career with that press conference. And it's kind of funny. So the last 2 jobs that she had, one ended their ties with Kathy Griffin right prior to the news conference, right? And then the very last one ended it right after her news conference because they were just they were really holding out. They were hoping that it was going to go well. But then as soon as that press conference kicked off, it was obvious. No, you can't, you can't play the victim. I think you said it. You can't play the victim for your own actions, right? It wasn't the president that did this to her. It was the American people. We did this because we saw this and were like, hey, that's not appropriate. Both left and right. I mean, her own coworkers called her out on it.
And I've said in the past on our show that I don't think people's careers need to be ended when they put stuff out. If they say something offensive, I don't think their career needs to be ended.
No.
And that's where I fell on this until, the press conference, things like that.
Right. And I mean, yeah, up until that point, it was very bad of her to do that, but I would have somewhat defended her to maintain some of her jobs. Mm-hmm. But then,
I mean, and then again, it's, it's not, there's nothing wrong with a business saying that they want to cut ties with someone because of what they said. Mm-hmm. But I just don't think that the internet needs to swarm after someone and take them down.
Right. Yep. But I mean, it's just, it's amazing that you can have that. There's been things that we've talked about in private that we've known, are just a little bit too much to put out there, mm-hmm. right? And plus, you kind of know that when you have your social media, right? There's certain things that you just probably shouldn't say. Some people fight against it by doing, terrible meme Friday or whatever. But for the most part, most of the time, we understand that there should be somewhat of a filter. This was a complete lapse in judgment on her part, mm-hmm. and she fucked up. She really messed up, and I don't feel bad for her. I really just don't feel bad for her in the slightest.
No, I don't.
And another big thing in the media this week was Donald Trump removing the United States from the Paris Agreement.
I don't know a lot about the Paris Agreement, what's inside the agreement.
Right.
But I don't think Trump deserves the flack he's getting for it.
Yeah.
Because he even said he just does not like the terms. He's willing to renegotiate. He's not walking away from the deal completely.
Right.
But people are overlooking that.
See, and so, yeah, that was one issue that I read up on, is that he wanted to renegotiate the deal. A lot of the other countries, they did not want to renegotiate the deal. But it's all kind of an interesting, weird kind of thing, because when you really read into from what I could even find on the Paris Agreement, besides all of the negative publicity on Donald Trump for removing the United States, is that it was very relaxed and very flexible. You didn't have to do, like, you could kind of just do whatever you wanted. It was just like a very loose agreement. It wasn't like a treaty or anything like that. It was just like, hey guys, like let's try to make our carbon emissions a little bit better, and you can kind of set your own time frame and do whatever. But
at the same time, if that's the case, why even have an agreement?
No, yeah, exactly. Like I do believe, like I wish I could get my hands on more of the raw data, because there might be some underlying, words mean things in government, and so when you sign these agreements, like you do have to be cautious. So there might be some things in there where it's like, okay, the rest of the world could pressure somebody. Maybe I haven't read it, but from what I did gather is that it was very relaxed and elastic when it came to.
Somebody I was talking to read through the agreement a little bit, and they explained something to me about how like each country would have a certain amount of emissions that they're allowed to produce each year, but then they could borrow other countries if they weren't using it and use that much more. So I mean, it sounded confusing.
Well, and then like the other kind of weird part about it that I did read into was underdeveloped nations kind of could overpollute, right? So if you were an underdeveloped nation, in a sense, you could overpollute until you became a developed nation, which that just doesn't seem. It seems weird. It's like instead of telling everyone, hey, let's slow down and like try to make the environment better, it's like let's even the race. Let's slow everybody down when it comes to developing nations until everybody reaches a point, and then we'll lower our carbon emissions, which that just was also kind of weird. Whenever you play the globalist game, it gets a little bit, it always seems a little bit shady to me, because like, the idea of having this peace between everyone, which peace is good, but this idea of having this one world government mixing of all different types of legal issues, and it just seems like it's a little bit fictitious and not going to really come to light. And those that really want to come to light will do anything. They are the shadow government, and it's very creepy.
And well, the weird thing about this agreement too is, how do you enforce it? Right. So if you fine a country, where does this money go?
Well, and who's to say, like, if you find in this type of terms, like it's a little bit beyond what we kind of consider being fined in a personal day-to-day life. But like, what's to say that one country would just say, no, I'm not going to pay your fine? Like, it's just very, like what you were saying, it's very unusual. It seems almost too wishy-washy.
It just doesn't seem necessary.
Exactly. But it would be interesting to get my hands on more, like the actual agreement and page through it.
I think that should almost be left, to private sectors to just kind of do their own personal research and try and get funding.
And instead, so now instead of the government coming in and saying to private sectors, you need to reduce your carbon emissions.
Oh no, I'm not saying
no. But like, let's just say that is our goal, right? Yep. Like, we want to reduce carbon emissions. Instead of going into the private sector, the government going into the private sector and saying, we are going to punish you if you do not restrict your carbon emissions. There should be a business incentive to restrict carbon emissions. And if the industries don't find that there's an incentive, then there's an issue. But if you offer an incentive, that's a very good gesture, and maybe we would see some lowering of our carbon emissions. But I don't like government involvement in anything, but that might be the best way for that to occur.
Well, and I don't even see anything really happening with it, because we all know Trump's stance on global warming and that kind of stuff.
Right.
I don't see in his presidency anything really any progress being made towards it.
So, like, I do have kind of, this is a off spurt, just right on that topic right there. I do find it kind of interesting because of how much he does, like, so he's a baby boomer, and how much he supports NASA, right? Mm-hmm. So from what I've read in the past, he is a very big supporter of NASA. He wants us to go to Mars. I don't know, have you seen any of the memes where, like, it's Donald Trump on Mars, and like it says like, oh, we're gonna mess up Mars, right? Like, that's our next goal.
I think early on, like even before he was officially sworn into office.
But like my favorite part though is like, so let's say that global warming is running rampant right now, and we do need to fix that. Let's just kind of play with that idea. even if the president doesn't support that idea, but he backs NASA, you are funding and you are backing a lot of scientists that can do work in that field. Like a lot of the major tech breakthroughs of the last, few decades, a lot of them have been derived from NASA technology. So, you know what? I'm completely fine with whatever your other science views are. If you're giving NASA a ton of money, things are going to get done, and it's going to be really nice for our society.
It's almost a trickle down effect.
Yeah, exactly. Like as far as government things go, NASA is the one thing that I love the most, and I could see them really helping out. Well, they already have helped out the world many times over with the development of iodized water filters, baby food, all of that. I mean, all of that was NASA technology, and it's just, I could ramble on about it. So, yeah, global warming is bad. The Paris Agreement, it's a little bit weird of an agreement, but overall, I think things are going to be okay, and people should probably just settle down.
Yeah, that agreement doesn't need to exist for anything to change.
Right. Especially when it should be every country, if global warming is the beast that it says it will be. And the main reason why I do kind of add in that, like, I want to leave room to be somewhat in the middle, but when it comes to that, when you have news articles that are 100 years old, right? Mm-hmm. So 100 years old that you could just change the date on, and it's kind of this, it mimics the same things as now. It does kind of bring to question, like, well, if 100 years ago they were having issues and they were saying all of these terrible things were happening and that we needed to be aware of our climate, and then now, like, why hasn't the world ended in between the times, right?
Well, so, not to get into too much of a discussion about global warming, I'm in the middle about it too, because I think it's hard to gauge something that takes, hundreds of thousands of years to actually see a true change.
Right.
And when we've only been recording history
and
for couple thousand years?
Right, and like actual like recording of data in this sense, like maybe a little like 150 years. Mm-hmm. But like what they will say, and what I've seen even Bill Nye say is when you look at that graph, like there is an acceleration to it, right? And that's the issue. That's what we're afraid of, is the acceleration of it. One of my biggest issues with that is pinpointing that, like, yeah, we do pump out a ton of carbon dioxide. Is that a greenhouse gas? Yes, it is. Will that cause heat increase? Yes. But we also have massive cattle farms. We've industrialized cattle farms. The globe has. And methane is a much larger magnitude worse of a greenhouse gas. That is the number one greenhouse gas that is in existence. It's amazing at reflecting light and maintaining warmth as far as like being a gaseous insulator. So that's where I'm like, okay, well, like, let's just do more studies. Let's look into it more, right? I'm not saying that we shouldn't look into it.
No, but I've seen a meme about it too. It's like, say global warming is wrong. What's wrong with trying to preserve the planet? Right.
No, exactly. Yeah, exactly. Well, and you know what? Like, we might as well kind of keep going with this a little bit more.
Yeah.
There's another interesting little like statistical figure that people like to use when it comes to, talking about global warming, is that they'll say that 97% of scientists all agree that global warming is occurring, right? Mm-hmm. When you look into that statistical figure, what it is they analyzed all of the different documents, right, mm-hmm. that PhD professors have wrote up. And out of those, 33% of them mentioned global warming. So that already kind of makes that a little bit weird. But they didn't actually cast an opinion on whether it was a result of human activity or not. So out of those 33%, but then out of the ones that did say, like, that did ask the question of, is human activity causing this? 97% of those then said yes. So it's not 97% of the scientists, but either way, it's good to take care of the planet, and I am all for that, because one example of just like total human waste when it comes to taking care of the planet, I was down in the Kennedy Space Center, right? And along that, there's a beach right on that same like area, and it's one of the longest uninhabited beaches in North America, and there was tons of trash. And that was pretty sad, recognizing like, oh, this is just floating around in our oceans. So like that sucks, and we do need to take better care of our environment. We do need to take better care of our planet, because we only have one for now. So, but then to kind of put the capstone on the entire podcast, we're just going to talk about a little bit about the most recent terrorist attacks. And Patrick, you really don't know much about it.
No, until we were kind of planning out our show, I didn't really even know there was another terrorist attack.
Yeah, so yesterday there was a terrorist attack in London where I believe it was like three gentlemen. I can't call them gentlemen. Three terrorists drove their vehicle into a group of people. And then they got out and they started to stab numerous people, yelling out, "This is for Allah," right? How authentic of an ISIS attack this is, that is still kind of in question. Like, are they copycats or whatnot? But just a couple of hours ago, ISIS did take credit for it. But it's another terrible terrorist attack, and I mean, it's becoming so common for these to occur.
I feel like you're seeing... I mean, maybe it's just because the most recent one was in the UK, but it seems like the UK is really the main target right now.
Well, Europe in general, right? Like UK, Europe, France, right? And like it's insane. It sucks that this is becoming so common that I'm sure if we went back through our podcasts, like, there's a lot of our podcasts where it'll have, oh, there was a terrorist attack, and it just seems to continue on. And if anything, it's accelerating. Either that or we're becoming more aware of it, but I think it's more or less the terrorist attacks are accelerating. They're increasing in frequency. And, like, what do we do? Like, I mean,
it's hard to say, because you have these groups that are spread out, all over Europe, probably other places that that we're not aware of yet. And how do you track all of them down, right? Mm-hmm. I'm sure there's, a large congregation somewhere in the Middle East of, like the main group.
Yeah.
But even if you took them out, you still have all these sects, broken off all over the world.
And, I mean, the other part that I do have issue with, because... are there good people in the Islamic faith? Yes. But like when you define extreme, let's just say, what is your definition? I'll ask you, what is your definition of radical Islam? What do you think is radical?
Well, I mean, the first thing that's going to come to my mind would be ISIS. So anything, anybody cutting off heads or shooting people, anybody, causing violence because a group doesn't believe what they believe or doesn't live how they feel that they should live.
Okay. So now that is a interesting thing, because so you remember Al-Qaeda, right? So like during Afghanistan, Iraq wars, Al-Qaeda was the big terrorist group. They didn't have they didn't have ISIS or ISIL, whatever they want to call themselves. But I think it was in a 2009 poll, they asked American Muslims, right? What is your opinion of Al-Qaeda, right? So what I'm trying to establish here is that concept of such a small percentage of the Islamic faith is like that it's such a small percentage. I'm kind of going to try and blow that out of the water.
Well, I already know where that's going, because it is a small percentage of all people of the Islamic faith, but there's almost 2 billion Muslims, isn't there? Or is it like a billion and a half or something?
Yeah, like 1.6 billion.
But they say it's 1%.
Right. No. So like I'm just going to even completely blow that out of the water here. So now if I asked you, what are your thoughts on Al-Qaeda, right? Like, what would you say on Al-Qaeda? As just a normal person.
They're not good.
Right, exactly. It's bad. It's bad. It's an easy question for a lot of us. But in that 2009 poll, they asked American Muslims, and almost 20% of them had indifferent or they weren't sure on their thoughts on Al Qaeda. That's on people here in the United States. Mm-hmm. That's the Muslims here in the United States. That's a little bit scary when you consider that there's somewhere in the ballpark of like I think like a little over 1 million, maybe 2 million Muslims in the United States. So now you're looking at, it's a 1 in 5, no matter which way you look at it. It's a 1 in 5 where it's like they're indifferent towards Al Qaeda. When you look at Indonesia, Bangladesh, any of these other countries, and you ask them about Sharia law, which is absolute ridiculous type of concept where it is a total theocratic government controlling what you do, every aspect of your life being controlled by that theocratic government. And there's overwhelming majorities in these countries. Millions upon millions of them support Sharia law. Millions upon millions of them support the stoning of women. I mean, this is like, yes, there are good people in this faith, but I'll go out and say that the good people in that faith do not actually follow it. They are not the followers of it, and a lot of those people that are not following it, they are the ones they are the westernized ones, and you shouldn't just be so protective over a group of people. It's steady acts of violence that are coming from a single group of people. Mm-hmm. You have to ask the question, what's going on here? Without political correctness, without political bias.
Well, and you see a lot of issues in these Western countries with people claiming Islamophobia.
Right.
I think the easiest way to destroy that is if you had, a lot of... I know that some of them are more than likely just afraid, but if you had Muslims in these countries coming out and speaking against these attacks and what's going on, then yeah, you would see Islamophobia almost disappear, because right now you have all of this happening, but you don't see them speaking out against it at all. And that falls into what you were saying with that study. They're just indifferent.
Right, exactly.
But I also am aware that there's people in these groups that are afraid that they'll be attacked by these, more radical or people that follow the religion to a T. Because, I mean, if you leave the religion, it's the punishment can be death.
Right, exactly. And, I mean, you have to also kind of look at, what do they have to gain from speaking out against the extreme, right? So what is it that they actually have to gain? I mean...
If you're in the Western countries, I feel like you would have a better quality of life.
I don't know.
Because especially if you're in an area where you're dealing with, people that are Islamophobic and are treating you poorly or, screaming at you or threatening to kill you or hurt you because you're walking around in Muslim garb.
Right.
You could see, some of that disappear. Obviously, there's still going to be people that are afraid. That's just how that works.
Yeah. But, and I mean, the fact that they even have categorized something as Islamophobia, and it's weird that they always kind of whip that out when there is terrorist attacks.
That's more of just a Western, or not Western, more of a liberal
right
buzzword.
It is, but it's just it's so crazy to think okay, there's a terrorist attack. It is a terrorist attack done by Muslims, but there's this quick jump to defending that, like for a group of people, the liberals, the Democrats, for them to be so quick to, let's get rid of the Christianity, the Judaism, all of these other issues, right? For a group of people that's so quick to dismiss those and want to kind of remove them from society, I find it so unusual when they're so quick to jump to the defense of Islam. I mean, for a group that a lot of atheists take a role in, and they it's weird that they also kind of protect a faith. And there's some theories out there, you guys can look it up, but I would highly recommend you just Google, why do Democrats protect Muslims? There's some interesting topics, some interesting theories out there, but I mean, it's are we going to be reporting on another terrorist attack this next Sunday? I mean, there's a good possibility of it, and it's just sad that that's the world that we are in, and that it's the continuing violence. And who knows what's going to happen when people do get so sick and tired of these terrorist attacks occurring. Because unlike some of the other talking heads out there, I don't agree that people should get used to this. This should not be a normal occurrence.
No, and that's one of the things that infuriates me is when you have, leaders of communities coming out and saying, well, this is just part of big city life.
Yeah, no, bombings should not be an occurrence in any civilization.
No, it's a de-evolution of society if that's happening all the time.
Exactly. And I don't know. It'll be interesting to see what happens in the future. I just hope that everybody stays safe and avoid those people with knives and vans that drive on sidewalks. So I think that'll be a good point to kind of wrap up our podcast. And I thank everyone for listening.
Thank you.